Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Just Fine podcast. Now, I've spent the last few episodes talking about my childhood, me feeling old, my self-confidence, and I figure this episode I can talk about what I'm afraid of, what fears I have, the phobias that plague me in my everyday life. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Wait a minute. Donald has fears? But Donald, you look so intimidating. It looks like nothing can faze you. You're so short and stocky. You just look like you can just brush anything off. Like nothing can get inside your head or make you feel fear. I know, it's pretty hard to believe. But trust me, plenty of things in this world freak me the fuck out. Now, it's not anything that other people or a majority of the population are afraid of. Like, I'm cool with spiders. Not cool with spiders, but spiders don't freak me out. I'm not afraid of snakes. I'm not afraid of heights, of planes or anything like that. There's just things in life that are so not obscure, so unnecessary to me that it elicits a fear response in my head. Things that I feel just don't belong in the context of anything, or just give off a creepy vibe that I've just become just terrified of. And I have no plans on getting over these fears. I'm fully content with how I live my life with these fears in my head, just because I live my life in such a way that I will never have to interact with the subjects that I'm afraid of. So there's really no need for me to try to get past them or do exposure therapy, because I live my life in such a way that I'll never interact with them. So why bother? But I figure I'll talk about them anyway, just because I'm afraid of some very, I wouldn't say unusual, but I'm afraid of things that people may find amusing, that I would find these things terrifying. So let's just start with the biggest one, shall we? The biggest thing I'm afraid of are dolls. Now, these could be really any dolls, but specifically porcelain dolls and those baby dolls that if you tilt them a certain way, they blink. Those are the most terrifying things in the world to me. If it was a Scooby-Doo cartoon and I saw a porcelain doll, I would run through a wall and leave a Donald-shaped hole behind me. My jaw would drop, I'd freak out, different parts of my face would just start exploding, and I would just take off. It elicits such a strong fear response in me that I can't deal with it. I just don't like them. Now, could it be because when I was in 5th grade, I had a very weird interaction with my elementary school principal when she brought a doll of the class that represented her deceased granddaughter? Possibly. Not even possibly. That definitely has something to do with this fear, but it's also again, the vibe they give off is not a holy or pure or even wholesome vibe. There's just something about a porcelain doll standing there, unmoving, not blinking, just constantly staring at you with the same facial expression. Almost like something from beyond the grave is looking at you through the doll. And they make porcelain dolls with real human hair on its head, and that just makes it even worse for me, because I don't trust people who say they collect porcelain dolls. There's just something slightly off with that person, and I will never trust you. I will never be alone with you if you ever come up to me and say, "Hey, I like to collect porcelain dolls as a hobby. It's like a collector's item for me." Okay, cool. Just know I'm never going to be around you ever again. Because again, there's something unhinged about a person who does that. No offense to any porcelain doll fanatics out there, but I mean, we've seen Criminal Minds. We see that person who collects a porcelain doll is just one tiny little step away from turning human beings into their own personal dolls. We've seen plenty of Law and Order and plenty of Criminal Minds episodes about that to know that that's a legit outcome. So you tell me you collect porcelain dolls, I will never be alone with you, and I may never even talk to you again. That's just the way my mind operates. And there's just something about sitting there, going to sleep, being in your most vulnerable state, just being there completely unconscious, not aware of anything that's going on around you, and just having a doll stare at you the whole time while you sleep. There's just something that I'm not comfortable about. I just don't trust that. And I mean, we've all seen Toy Story. I mean, growing up, I firmly believed that whenever I left my room, my toys would come to life and to go on their own little adventures, to the point where I would sit outside my room up until probably the age of 20, and I would just make noises like la 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 la, I'm doing something else, and then just slowly peek my head around the corner to try to see if I could catch my toys standing up, walking around, or talking to each other. And obviously, now that I'm 23, I don't believe that with most toys, but I still believe that with porcelain dolls. I believe once you go to sleep and you have a porcelain doll in your room, it kind of like doesn't like fully come to life like in Toy Story, but like it gains some sort of like consciousness, or it becomes a little bit sentient. So like it just adjusts its body so it can look at you better as you sleep. Maybe talking about my fears while recording this in the middle of the night isn't the greatest idea, but fuck it, we're already well underway, so I'm just gonna keep going. And like, it's at the point that I worry about the struggles future Donald may go through because of this fear. Like, I'm worried I may find someone, we may hit it off, we go on a date, she invites me back to her apartment, and she shows me around, and I see a porcelain doll. I know my mind, I know myself well enough to know if I see a porcelain doll, this girl could be perfect on all levels. She could literally be my soulmate. But if I walk into her room and I just see a doll like on a shelf or on her bed, I'm turning around, not saying a word, grabbing my keys, leaving, and never speaking to her again. I know that for a fact. And I know what's even worse is that what happens if I marry someone and one day, like 5 years into our marriage or whatever, she gets a package from like a deceased great aunt that has a porcelain doll that the relative left to her in her will. If I see that, I will just instantly say, all right, pick the doll or me, because only one of these two things is going to live here for the rest of their lives. So, do you want the doll to live here, or do you want me to live here? And it won't be a joke. I'll be dead serious. And what happens if I have a kid? Like, what if my kid really wants a doll for their birthday, or really wants, like, me, and I get them the doll, what if they really want me to play with them with the doll and have, like, a tea party with the doll or wants me to hold the doll while they go to the bathroom or whatever, what am I going to do? I'm not strong enough to put up a brave face for my child, especially when it comes to a doll that they like, because I don't like them. I'm afraid of them. And what? I'm going to show my kid that daddy's a little bitch about the doll? They'll lose all respect for me. So, I don't know what I'll do in that situation. Maybe I'll just make a rule that my child or children can only play with their dolls while dad is not at home. And once dad goes to sleep, they have to put their dolls in like a safe or something. That way I'm fully safe in my mind, that I know the dolls can't get at me. I don't know. That's something for future Donald to worry about, but that legit plagues my mind. And somewhat related, clowns. I don't fuck with clowns. Not on the same level as porcelain dolls, because like I know I can fight a clown if I have to. I can't fight a doll. That may sound weird, but like if a doll freaks me out and I punt it, there's nothing that tells me that the doll won't come back. Because dolls feel no pain. So I could punt a doll that like startles me or like winds up in my room one day. I could punt it easily. No issue. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, the doll can just come back. If it's that determined, the doll could just come back. But with a clown, I can beat the fuck out of a clown. I don't care. And the fear of clowns, I feel, just it's not relatively new. Feel it's always been there, but it really became concrete when I think It came out for a few years ago, and people were dressing up as clowns and like chasing people in the dark, walking down like abandoned country roads with like knives and shit, and like trying to scare people or run at people in their cars. And a lot of clowns got their asses handed to them, which is cool. But in my mind, that's like, oh, the possibility of like me interacting with a clown outside of the normal context of a circus or even a birthday party is much higher than I thought. So the fear became a lot more real. And then it kind of, while a porcelain doll will elicit a fear response that makes me want to run, seeing a clown in like an everyday context, like outside my apartment building, will elicit a fear response also, but more so in a fight outcome. Like adrenaline starts rushing, my pupils dilate, my muscles tense, I stop sweating, just ready for anything. And it's not like if I see a clown, I'm going to run up and punch it, but I'll just be in a heightened state of awareness. So if the clown does try anything, I'll lay that motherfucker out. And a lot of people, like, I love Batman, and obviously Batman's number one enemy is the Joker. My fear doesn't come from like the Joker or like the Dark Knight movie or the Joker movie that came out or the cartoons that had the Joker, because the Joker in those cartoons was pretty creepy, but it was never like, my fear of clowns never came from that. It was from just the creepy vibe a real life clown gives out. And I think I've only gone to one birthday party growing up that had a clown, and I did not like it. There's just some, like, in the same way that someone who collects porcelain dolls has something slightly off that makes them one step away from becoming a serial killer in my mind, same thing with a clown. I mean, we saw it in the Joker movie. All it takes is one bad day for a clown/comedian to turn into a supervillain. So, same thing in my mind. I don't like deer. Deer freak the fuck out of me. And that's one that a lot of people don't believe when I tell them. I mean, if I tell people I'm afraid of dolls, I'm afraid of clowns, there's some level that they'll believe me just because it seems like, oh, that makes sense. Even though I'm like this stocky dude with a really intimidating resting bitch face most of the time, that's at least reasonable, because those things have some sense of creepiness to them. People never believe me when I tell them I'm afraid of deer. Like, if you look at a deer, they don't have irises. There's no, like, colored part of their eye. It's just all black. And I've never seen a deer blink. And that, to me, is, like, one of the number one signs of something being evil, if it doesn't blink. If it just stares at you. Because if you blink, like, if you don't blink, that means you don't feel pain. Think about it. Try not blinking for like a minute or two. Eventually your eyes start to burn. It starts to hurt a little bit. But if you don't blink, that means your eyes, one of the most sensitive parts of your body, is not feeling the pain of not blinking. And I've never seen a deer blink. So to me, they're the spawn of Satan. That's just where my mind goes. And I'll be honest. A lot of people watched Bambi and cried when Bambi's mom got shot. I didn't really care. Because again, I don't like deer. So I'm thinking, when I watch it, I'm like, oh, good. One less deer in the world to spread its message of evil. I know, to most people, that's a fucked up thing to say. But again, deer, they're not good. They're not wholesome to me. Like dogs are amazing. They're happy. They adore you. Cats, I'm not the biggest cat person in the world, but at least when you look at a cat's eyes, you can see some sort of like soul there, no matter how small. But there's some sense of soul and some sense of goodness within them. Squirrels, you look at a squirrel is just wholesome, incarnate. It's just pure and good. A deer will kill you with a knife when you turn away from it. I fully believe that. And I mean, there was one instance like 2 years ago. I was driving back from Houston at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So there was no one else on the road. It was just me. It was like not a super big interstate, but it was just like a 2-lane highway. And I wasn't going super fast because I was tired. I wanted to get there one piece. I didn't want to get there fast. So I was driving, and I see my brights are on, and I see something just in the middle of the highway. It wasn't lights or anything. It was just like a shape. And so I slowed down a little bit, and I keep slowing down, and then I stop completely, and like, I want to say like 10, 15 feet in front of my car is a deer staring at me. And I don't know if deer can smell fear, but my fear was so strong that I'm sure it was radiating out of my car, and the deer could sense it. And again, I'm pretty sure I'm like one of the only people in the world that's afraid of deer. And so this deer must have been like, oh, this guy's afraid. This is unique. This is interesting. I've never felt this before. I'm going to see how far I can take it. So the deer did not move. I honked. I flashed my brights. Nothing. Like it was a statue. It could have been a statue. It didn't move at all. Again, no blinking at all. Staring at me with its black eyes. And so I literally moved my car an inch forward, thinking that my big, intimidating Kia Soul would scare this deer off the road and I can continue on my journey. No. The deer called my bluff. And then it took a step towards me. And in that moment, I'm like, oh, fuck this. I'm not about to get into a showdown with the deer. This deer could like, in my mind, this deer was like 20 seconds away from like just standing up on its hind legs and coming out and punching my window and pulling me out. So I reversed, sped back really quickly. Luckily, there was like an offshoot from the highway I was on down some little country road. I made Google Maps reroute me. I took that country road, added 15 minutes to my journey back home, went around that deer, and continued on my way. Because the minute that deer took a step towards me after I moved my car an inch forward, it was on. That's when I knew not to fuck with deer, and that my fear of them was completely legitimate because it called my bluff. It knew I was afraid and was about to beat the living fuck out of me. So again, I'm not gonna fuck with deer. That's why I don't want to camp. Again, I went camping one time. I got out of the tent to go to the bathroom, and a deer was standing like really not super close to my tent, but it was just standing there. I got out, and I saw the deer just staring at me with its black eyes. Again, all deers have black eyes, just soulless eyes. I was like, holy fuck. It startled the shit out of me. I quickly just scooted back, walked around my tent to go to the bathroom. I looked back, the deer was gone. It was no longer standing where it was standing. It had slipped into the shadows. Again, so in my mind, that deer had slipped away. It now could be anywhere. It knows which tent is mine. It's going to follow me. It's going to watch me pee. It's going to watch me walk back. It knows which tent is mine, so it's just going to stare at me for the rest of the night. Again, I just don't fuck with deer, so I don't want to put myself in a situation that I could find a deer and interact with it, and like it could possibly beat the shit out of me. So that's why I don't want to put myself in a situation. That's why I won't go camping or anything like that. And like fish freak me the fuck out too. There's just so much mystery with like the ocean itself that like we don't know, like we're not at the point where we can go to the depths of the ocean, so we don't know what's down there. And like there's so many freaky looking fish that they're just scary. Like I don't give a fuck about sharks. Like I'm never going to go into a part of the ocean that has a shark. So really it's not rational for me to have a fear of shark if I know I'm never going to be near a shark. But fish could be anywhere. And 2 pictures of fish I found on the internet, just Googling one day, really kind of, again, solidified my fear. I saw a picture of a fish with human teeth, which if you haven't seen is like nightmare fuel. I hate it. And then I'm pretty sure this next picture was fake, but still, it gave me nightmares for like 2-3 days. It was like a white fish with like a human eye in the middle of its head. It was like a cyclops fish. Whew. I don't like that. And like fish mouths are always moving. It's like it's talking, but I don't know what it's saying. So it could be saying things like, oh, I'm going to fuck you up. I'm going to watch you while you sleep. I'm going to, like, it could be saying anything, and I don't know because I don't speak fish. It's just terrifying to me. And again, I've never seen a fish blink. And again, so fish don't feel pain in their eyes. The most sensitive part of their body, they don't feel pain. And they don't blink. Same thing with deer. I don't trust things that don't blink. I'm definitely going to have nightmares about porcelain dolls, clowns, deer, and fish. I'm just going to have nightmares. Oh well, I did this to myself. I'll talk about one more. And this one isn't necessarily, it's not a fear. It started out as a fear, and then it just became something I was very anxious about constantly, and then developed a little bit into some like an OCD type of thing. So growing up in the house I spent most of my childhood in Abilene, we had a garage. And we had a garage door opener. So it was like a machine that was attached to the ceiling, that was also attached to like the little chain pulley system that opened and closed the garage door. And at the bottom of the garage door were 2 cameras that were constantly looking at each other. And if the garage door was closing and you kind of like interrupted like if you walked in the eye line of these 2 cameras, it told the garage machine that something was underneath the garage door and to stop if it was closing and then open back up so it didn't crush anything. It's like a safety precaution. And the garage door opener machine was attached to a little electrical circuit that was connected to a switch on our wall. And so if you turn the switch off, the garage door opener would turn off. If you turned it on, it would turn on. And there was a few times growing up that the garage door would open by itself without anyone clicking the button or doing anything. It would just open by itself. And there was one time that I witnessed it, that I saw it open by itself without anyone doing anything. And immediately in my head, I went, oh, that just opened by itself. What happens if it opens by itself in the middle of the night while we're asleep? And then I thought, if it opens by itself in the middle of the night while we're all asleep, that's basically a welcome party for home invasion. That's just basically saying to the world, hello, we're all asleep, we're super vulnerable, come in and rob us. Come in and take our shit and hurt us. So, like any super anxious, slightly nervous, weird child does, I took precautions whenever I went to bed. So I waited until my parents and my brother fell asleep, and then I would go around my house and basically do a lot of, like, not necessarily Home Alone type shit, but I would just rig shit or set up shit to, like, protect us. So, like, the front doors, the doors around the house, I would go and I would check every single lock like 100 times. Make sure the deadbolts were locked all the way, make sure everything was locked, make sure the knob locks were locked. And then once I did that 100 times, I would start placing shit in front of the doors. I would take tables and move it in front of the front door. I would take chairs and put them in front of the back door. In that house, we had a sliding glass door to the backyard. I would take, like, broomsticks or poles or whatever, and I would jam them between the door and the wall it slid to. That way, there was no gap for the door to slide. So if you tried to open it, the various pieces of junk I put there would stop it from opening. And then it took me a few weeks to figure out, what am I going to do about the garage door switch? Because I would always, like, consistently check that the switch was off. But then in my mind, I thought, that's not good enough. I can turn the switch off, but I've seen the garage door go up by itself. So what happens if I turn the switch off and the switch just magically flicks itself back on, and then the garage door opens by itself? So for like a week or so, I was freaking out because, like, I didn't know what to do. But then I had the brilliant idea one day, I'll just take a shit ton of Scotch tape and just put layers and layers of it on top of the switch while it's flipped off. That way it's impossible for it to flip on by itself. And so I did that. And it was like catnip for my OCD. I just felt so warmed, like, I figured it out. I've protected my family. I did it. And so I did everything. I did that for years. I did it really until I left for college, if I'm being completely honest. I always put shit in front of the doors. I did everything to like, in my mind, protect my family from the possibility of someone breaking in. And, like, I went off to college and I live in an apartment now. I've been living on my own for a while. I haven't done any of that shit. Like, I obviously, like, I have a knife by my bed and shit like that. But, like, I don't, like, put chairs or anything in front of the door to any of the doors in the apartment. I don't put tape on anything. And so in my mind, I really think I was doing that to not necessarily protect me, but really protect my mom, my dad, and my brother, which is kind of sweet if you think about it, but still relatively overboard, because I would spend like 30 minutes in an hour to an hour every night at like 1 a.m. doing this when my parents and my brother slept. And I don't remember if they ever got onto me. I know they got onto me for the tape. They told me to stop doing that with the tape, because I was just wasting a whole shit ton of tape every night. I don't think I know they never, I don't think, if they did stop me, it didn't stick with, like, putting chairs in front of shit. I know they got annoyed, because they had to, when they woke up in the morning, they just had to move everything and put everything the way everything back to where it was supposed to go, and then go about their day. I know they yelled at me about the tape, but then I just kept doing. I just found other ways to kind of satisfy that OCD in my head. Oh, dang! I'm afraid of a lot of stuff, and I didn't even cover other things that I'm afraid of. Like, I'm afraid of sleeping on planes. I'm afraid of something called submechanophobia, which is like, for me, it's like the fear of animatronics underwater. It's terrifying. I'm afraid of, well, I'm not afraid of grease, but it just makes me very uneasy seeing like something shiny like on a surface. Like, it freaks me the fuck out. Like, if light is shining on like a counter and I see something shiny just on the counter and looks sticky, I freak out. Like, I sweat. So yeah, there's more things that I'm afraid of, but I've talked about enough things that terrify me, and it's nighttime when I'm recording this, so I'm about to go have some nightmares, so I don't want to bring up anything else from the crevices of my mind. I guess I can do a follow-up episode about other things I'm afraid of. That way I can kind of break it apart. But I hope you enjoyed this little glimpse into my mind and what I'm afraid of. So this has been episode 4 of the Just Fine podcast. Remember, you can follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at Just Fine Podcast. We are on YouTube. I say we like there's more than one. It's just me doing this. And the podcast is on YouTube. You can find it and watch and listen. Well, not really watch, but listen to it on YouTube. The Just Fine Podcast. Just search that. The podcast is also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Again, just search the Just Fine Podcast. We have a website, www.thejustfinepodcast.com. And we have an email address. So if you want to send me any topics you want me to talk about, any anecdotes you want me to share, any questions you have, just shoot the podcast an email. The email is justfinepod@gmail.com. And again, like, subscribe, download. I hope y'all are enjoying this so far. I'm certainly having a blast doing it. It gives me something creative to do while I'm doing school and work. So again, my name is Donald MacPhail, and I hope you have a just fine weekend.